You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community. We invite you to be a part of it. Head to thewritingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Coming up on tonight's bonus show is author Chris McDonald, who is also a podcaster. And he came on this show in 5 days, 2 years ago, in 2020 in December. So it'll be great to catch up on where he's been, what he's been up to, and talk about his new book, Little Ghost. And we'll have a great chat. Thank you for joining us. Me and Chris are here, and we'll see you after this little video. Hello, Christopher Hooley. How are we doing?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. It's Tuesday. What's happening?
It is Tuesday, and normally we would be doing our See You Next Tuesday slot, which we've been doing, which is live on Twitter Spaces, and we will be doing that after this show. We'll be going directly over to Twitter, and we'll be doing that See You Next Tuesday slot, which has been really eventful. It's grown every single week that we've done it. More people are getting involved. It's been a great space for us to talk about the things in life that bother us, or writing issues. We obviously, being a Writing Community Chat Show, we've had a lot of chats about writing, and we've had people from all over the world join in and get involved, and it's been very, very different to our usual format, but I've been enjoying it. It's been good.
It has been very, very good. And hello to you all in the chat. Nice to see you. Halo's in there. Linda, Terry, Ross, Brandon. Brilliant to see you all here. Linda says, Hooley is all festive.
Yeah, I'm very festive. So festive, in fact, that the lines are actually coming across my face now. It's like I've been infected by Christmas.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And of course, Ross mentioned on Twitter earlier, it's Chris, what did he say? Christmas, Chris something. There's so many Chris's on the show tonight.
That's what it seems to be.
So yeah, that'll be interesting. And Brandon says, so this is a special See You Next Tuesday, but it's not Chris, is it?
No, this is completely separate. We have so many great guests for season 10. And obviously Chris McDonald came out with his latest book, which is in the top corner there, Little Ghost. And we just couldn't not have him on. He had to come on the show because it's such a great book. I'm not going to introduce him just yet because there's something else I want to probe before I do that. But I've been reading that this week. It's been my read for the week, and I've really enjoyed it. So I can't wait to chat to him about his book. And obviously, as you said, he's returning to the show. So we've had him a couple of times now.
I think what I want to talk about very quickly before we get this on is the power of the writing community, and the fact that as authors, we will all make mistakes. There's no doubt in that. We will make mistakes. We will learn. We will be let down by things. We will create events, massive promotional opportunities that people don't take up. We'll get loads of things wrong. And one thing this show is highlighted, and the reason this show is here, is to support the community in the writing community. And we had a tweet last week, probably 2 weeks ago, that had a load of engagement. And we know what the analytics on Twitter are like. We work hard to promote our stuff, and we just don't see the return. But we happen to have over 1,000 likes and comments and retweets and stuff, and it was fantastic. And the power of that has been seen again over the past couple of days. Twitter is not dead. It is far from that. And in fact, since that takeover, Terry says, like my failed Kickstarter. Yes, we all struggle with certain things. But that tweet had gone not viral, but it had done very well. And someone else's over the past couple of days, which you will have seen, many of you, also do fantastically well. So I just want to share that and talk about it on the screen just very quickly to show that, things happen to us all, but good things still can happen as a result. So Chelsea B writes on Twitter, and in fact, you might have just seen that still flicking over. This was like 2 days ago. And the likes and the comments are still happening. She said, only 2 people came to my author signing yesterday, so I was pretty bummed out about it, especially as 37 people responded that they would go into the event, kind of upset, honestly, and a little embarrassed. She tweeted that. Chelsea's got like 6,000 followers, which is great. She's had 65,300 likes, 3,206 quote retweets, and 2,278 retweets. And what is amazing about this is the encouragement and the support of all the authors and readers and people in this kind of world gave her, including, if you look below there, Tony Lee, who's been on the show before, fantastic person. Neil Gaiman said, Terry Pratchett and I did a signing in Manhattan for Good Omens that nobody came to at all. So you were two up on us. And further down there somewhere, is it gone? Stephen King. At my first Salem's Lot signing, I had one customer, a fat kid who said, hey, bud, do you know where there's some Nazi books? Which is brilliant. So Manchinini, someone else we had on the show, which was amazing. 3 books in, and I did a signing in Costco with crickets. I spent most of the signing telling shoppers I had no idea where toilet paper or bacon was. The responses are fantastic to this tweet, and I just love the idea of all of us getting in the same boat, all of us trying, all of us failing along the line somewhere, and just the community being there to pick us up. And I hope that this continues, and it's great to see that happening. And I think it's wonderful. Chris, you've obviously seen that as well.
Yeah, I love the fact that even the best-selling authors that like Stephen King, that sold hundreds of millions of copies of books, gets involved at that level to try and give people encouragement. Not to get disheartened by the knockbacks that you could possibly get in this industry, because that's obviously a lot of people that watch this show, they're inspiring writers, and they probably think, oh, they got the book published, and going to the first ever signing, and disappointment with a couple of people turning up there. But those disappointments, from what I've experienced and speaking to people, it's a continuous disappointment, because then you get dropped by your publisher, and then somebody else you're in this back to square one type thing, or your book doesn't sell as many copies as you expected, and it's just a constant battle. So I think the more support we can get for everyone, the better.
Yeah, it's a tough world is being an author, and figuring out marketing and social platforms, all that stuff is really difficult. Terry says she had 3,000 followers 2 days ago. She is currently on 9,054, and that tweet is still going mad. So there you go. Ross says there are occasional positives as well as miserable, sad. Sod. So it is one of those things that we need to work together and stick together, and that's clearly what's happened there. And it shows the power of the community is massive there. It's still strong, and people have fled to other platforms, but it seems like people are coming back, and that's good for us. We've done a lot of work on Twitter, Chris, since the start of the show. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. Should we introduce tonight's guest?
I think we should.
Yeah, so he's the third spot on the Chris versus Chris. Not Chris versus Chris. We're not challenging. Chris and Chris threesome. I don't know if some baby Jesus is going to be born as a result of this 3 wise men together. But yeah, he's also the author of the DI Erika Piper series. It's a great series if you're into crime fiction. He's also the author of the Stonebridge series, which is a cozy crime set of novels, and I think there's 6 or 7 of them now as well. And also he's come on the show to chat to us tonight about Little Ghost, which is a fantastic novel that follows a brand new character and a bit more of a gritty character to what Chris has given us in the past with Irving Ash, he's a private investigator in America. And some of the tones, I reviewed this on Amazon the other day and gave it 5 stars because it was such a great read. And as you can tell by the cover, that it's got a really gritty crime sort of tone to it. And it reminded me of the likes of like Michael Connolly and people like that. So it's a really, really good series. And it's the first. Hopefully there's many more. And we're going to chat to him about that tonight. So ladies and gentlemen, Chris McDonald.
Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. It's fantastic to see you back on the show. How are you feeling?
I'm loving being here. And the thing that you were just saying about the community, you two are a massive part of this, and it's so lovely to be asked back. And I'm so thankful that you're giving up a night that you don't normally do this just to have me. So I really do appreciate it.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say, Chris. And of course, we'd have you back on the show and to cause Chris chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
what
think
a
it's going
great
to break the
introduction.
internet. Yeah. Yeah. How have things been for you, Chris? And it's been quite a while since we've seen you on the show. And I think I mentioned you on the show as an interview guest like 2 years ago, but I'm sure you've appeared on some panel shows in between that. How have you been? How are things?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. Yeah, I'm still a teacher as well, so it's not gone brilliantly. But no, it's great, and you know, to get to do these kind of things and to get people to the fact that people are still choosing to read my books. I think my debut came out 3 years in February, maybe, so nearly 3 years ago. And people are still discovering it, and it's just a mind-blowing thing. So yeah, it's nice, and it's a cool community to be part of.
Amazing. So with your debut 3 years ago, do you still feel like, I'm not sure how you like, I feel about my debut. I'm a little like, I'll leave that there because I know I could have improved it a lot. Do you feel like you could have really improved on that because you've grown as an author, or is that something you still really cherish and you're really happy that people are kind of discovering that so it'll lead on to the rest of your work as well?
Yeah, I think it was a good starting point. Definitely when I've been asked to read back at certain things, a Bloody Scotland, I think the lockdown year of Bloody Scotland where they did it online, and I was asked to be one of the spotlight people just before a panel, and I read a bit and I just thought, oh, I wouldn't have done that, or I'd have changed that. So there's definitely, I'm happy with it, and I'm not one that goes back and rereads stuff for fear of that, but I look back at it with fond memories and think it's a pretty good starting point for what's to come. Yeah, I'm all right with it.
Yeah, fantastic.
And Chris, I should imagine people, if they read your debut and then go, oh, I'm going to read everything else that he's wrote, they're going to get a very mixed bag there. So how have you sort of navigated through that writing process in terms of how have you gone, right, I'm going to write this and now I'm going to try a bit of something else and try something else?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I quite like things in threes, or in lots of three. So I did 3 in the police series. I sort of got to a point where I thought I really liked the character and stuff, but I quite liked where book 3 ended. And I thought I'd left it in quite a good place. So I thought, and I think it was during lockdown when the 3rd one came out. I kept heralding lockdowns in with the release of books. So that one came out just as the first lockdown started, I think, or one of them. And loads of my flights home were cancelled, and I was getting really sick, well, homesick. And I started reading cozy crime as a sort of a relief, I guess, from the heaviness of everything that was happening. And I'd read these little novellas that Red Dog were putting out, called The Cherringhams, and I loved them. They were just so light relief and things like that. And I kind of wanted to have a go, so I created these 2, like, I call them idiots, but affectionately, because it's essentially me and my best friend, with different names, going around this fictional town of Stonebridge, which is based on Coleraine, which is where I'm from in Northern Ireland, solving crimes. Their only real basis is that they've watched a lot of Sherlock on telly and think that they can do it. So they're short and they're snappy. And I think Sean at Red Dog, we had a sort of discussion about that. Do we use a pseudonym or what? But he said if we just change the covers, people will know that it's different and give them a complete style of their own. So there were 6 of those. And then we had the same sort of discussion with Little Ghost, which again is a different series. I had written it under a pseudonym, and then when he sent me the cover, it's the first time I saw that he was using my name. So that wasn't a decision that we made jointly, but I'm pleased that he did, because I guess it's a bit of an ego thing, isn't it? Like, it's mine.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I think it is a covers thing, because I think that it's clear that that's not a cozy, and I think the cozies, it's clear that it's not like a police serious thing. So yeah, I think they're differentiated by that, hopefully.
I think Gangs in New York is on Sky at the moment, is a really kind of big thing in the UK, and that's given me a lot of those vibes, and that's a really dark, gritty show. So I'm getting those vibes from that cover, definitely.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I love the cover. I mean, I had no hand in that at all, so I feel free to say that I really am chuffed with it.
Yeah.
No, I think it looks great. I love the contrast of the title there and everything. So if we talk a little about a little bit about Irving Ash and how he came to fruition in your mind. Where did the inspiration behind him come from?
One of my books of last year, the one it's called A Man Named Doll, by Jonathan Ames. I'd really liked books that he'd done previously. He'd sort of done it was like a P.G. Wodehouse kind of, I don't know, it's sort of, I think the character was called, it's like a butler that looks after this really rich man that's like hopeless at life, but it was hilariously funny. And I picked up the next one, and it was a PI story, and just completely different, and I absolutely loved it. And after I'd finished it, I thought I'd really love to have a go at writing something in that genre. And I'd done 6 Stonebridges, and again 2 lots of 3, so I was like, right, that might be a good time to end there. And I started writing it, and I just really loved it. I loved the sort of different vibe of it. After writing 6 cozies, I was ready for a bit of darkness. So yeah, I needed a PI, a private investigator, and Irving Ash was the man. And again, it's hard to it's easy to fall into the sort of hard drinking kind of thing, and I wanted to make him, I mean, the first thing he's doing is having a drink and drowning his sorrows, but he's sort of going through a divorce, but he's trying to get fit, and he knows that he shouldn't be doing these things, and he does try throughout the book. So I kind of wanted to make him a bit of black humor almost in it. So that was my starting point, Irving Ash in a bar. Actually, it wasn't the first chapter. I think it's the second chapter now. So the first thing I wrote was him sort of sitting at his table watching a spider, and he's opening his divorce thing, and his cat comes in, and he loves his cat so much. So I wanted to get that sort of sweet side of him. And then Sean was like, have him do something a bit crazy in the first chapter and really set the scene. So then I went back and had him like sort of kick someone's teeth in.
Yeah. When I was writing a review, and I was trying to get his character, and I've never really seen a character like him in books or in TV. He reminds me of a lot of characters, but he's more like, I originally thought like James Bond mixed with Harry Bosch, because he's got that streak in him where you know he could absolutely kick the shit out of you if he needed to, like you just said. But he's also very polite and well mannered as well at the same time, especially obviously with women as well, which normally you don't get that. If you've got that sort of drinking character that's divorced and kind of a little bit bitter, normally they're assholes to everyone, whereas he's very much not. And I think that's why he stood out to me as being such a unique character. So what made you like, was that a conscious thing that you thought right from the off, I'm going to, make this guy more likable by doing these things that are a bit different to what we're used to seeing?
Yeah, a little bit. And that's really kind of you to notice. Thank you very much. Yeah, I quite wanted him to be like a man of contradictions, like you say, where he's sort of mild-mannered, and he's sort of, one of the first things he's doing is standing in front of the mirror, sort of poking his pudgy belly, and he knows he's let himself go a little bit, and he notices, or he thinks he notices, when he's chatting with someone that their eyes might have drifted to his stomach, so he's sort of like a bit worried about other people's perception. So I tried to make him a bit like, that you'd feel maybe a bit sorry for him, that his life isn't going the way that he planned. But I also wanted him to be like, you wouldn't mess with him. And I quite like that. And I'm pleased that that's come through, that's coming through. So thank you very much.
Did you, when you changed the kind of angle of your writing from where you were into this darker sort of world, did you find it a challenge for your writing to adjust, or was it a really nice transition for you to get into something else?
It was hard. I sent the first, I think, 10,000 words to Sean, who's my publisher at Red Dog. I did it so when I was writing the police story of the series, I sent him the first 10,000 words of the cozy, and he replied saying like, great, do what you're supposed to be doing, and we'll talk about these later. So I think I was supposed to deliver the 6th cozy, and I sent him 10,000 words of the PI thing, and he was like, flip's sake, like, just do what you're contracted to do. And then but he said it's got legs, and definitely explore that afterwards. He did say it felt very much like cozy but trying to be dark. So he said, just get the cozy out of your system and then come back and we'll talk about it. One of the things that he changed was Irving Ash was a bit weirder in the first draft, where he'd sort of go into these monologues about things that he noticed, which I thought was quite funny. And Sean was like, it comes across as weird. And if you're going for this like dark vibe, go dark and take out that stuff. And it's absolutely the right decision. I read back some of the stuff the other day, and it's just like, you're like, what was I thinking? Like, awful, awful stuff. But I think I was trying to stick too close to the book that I mentioned earlier, where that happens, and I loved it. And I thought it was too much based on that kind of thing. So I'm really pleased that Sean is good at what he does.
Yeah.
If you could give the audience watching this, or anyone listening back then, some advice on how to get into writing a dark character, what tips have you learned along the way, or what tips could you give that would help them in that process?
I think Dominic Nolan, if you know, he wrote Vine Street. He's an incredible author, and he read it pretty early on, and he said, rub some dirt on it. And it was really something that stuck with me. So if there was like a bar, I'd try and pick some details out that, without saying like it was dark and dingy, I tried to pick sort of 3 things that show that. So I think the first one, he goes to the pool, the barman has confiscated the pool cues, and it's just used as a table because everyone always fought. So
Nice.
It was sort of getting those little details in that I think, without saying it, I guess it's show not tell, isn't it, where where you do that. So yeah, that was the thing. And I think anything where there were conversations in the Stonebridge books, which were the cozies, everything's sort of light-hearted, and in this it can be, but then there are times where it's like short, sharp, sort of staccato words, and it sort of changes the tone quite quickly when people are sort of snippy with each other. So yeah, those were the 2 things, sort of dialogue and just picking those little details.
Fantastic.
So once you had the character in mind, Chris, and you've got the setting, how did you decide what the story was going to be in terms of, he's a private investigator, but obviously in order for him to have a story, you have to have something to investigate. So how did that come about?
Yeah, I wanted him sort of down his luck at the start, where there's something that's happened, and it's not really hinted at, and I don't even really know myself, but it's something that's happened where he's sort of made unhireable. And he takes this sort of security gig at the start where it's a little bit below his skill set, but he needs the money. He's going to lose his office, and he loves his office, and it's like a sign of status, I guess, to him. It's got a nice view, and that's what he loves. So he needed the money, and so he takes this job, an adult entertainment complex, I guess, a warehouse, where they make Rudy Doody movies. And he there's been a few break-ins, and the guy is losing money and things like that, so the guy hires him to look after it at night, and it's really just sitting there in his car, and then on like the 5th night, the sort of leading adult entertainer that earns the most money turns up with a man sort of following her in, and he walks in, they're having a bit of a fight, and then she goes missing. And I kind of thought the guy that owns the company hires him to find her. So I thought that was a nice way in, where he knows him already rather than that. So yeah, and that's where it went. And I kind of just wanted it to be a sort of rip-roaring kind of thing through a town that I didn't really know. So I chose Denver. I did a walking tour on YouTube for 2.5 hours. I followed a guy around that sort of showed little local sites and stuff like that. And that was where it came from. Yeah, I just wanted because I don't think it's much bigger than. Well, Dom Nolan told me Birmingham. I'm not going to take credit for it. So it was kind of like not massive. And I kind of think I got a good feel for it from just those 2.5 hours watching Mark walk through Denver.
When it comes to research, then, did you go into any research in certain industries for this?
I watched Louis Theroux. I remember there was a Louis Theroux documentary. It must be like a decade old now, because he looks young in it. But he went through like the sort of casting process. He talked to people, and it's just such a horrific sounding industry. I mean, it feel like, I think it's sold as glamorous and stuff like that, obviously, but the behind the scenes stuff, and I kind of wanted to get that where it was in a seedy warehouse in the middle of this like back road kind of thing. No one was really happy. Everyone was like, the men have got like sort of frosted tips, and the women are wearing very little and stuff. And I didn't want to paint it as very nice. And then there was the sort of thing like, is the main person that he's trying to get away from it, or so there's that kind of thing. So yeah, Louis Theroux mainly.
I mean, of course, I was talking about the PI, but no, of course, yeah. But in terms of a PI, how much research, or how much did you know about that before you went into it, and did you have to learn a lot? Because I think a writer's search history when it comes to researching is probably one of the most interesting things you can read.
Yeah, absolutely. There's bound to be a file on all of us, isn't there?
Yeah,
it cannot be good. I didn't do a lot. I mean, I like to read that genre, so. I'd read lots of James Crumley, Jonathan Ames, like I mentioned. His second one's just come out this week, and it's so good. Yeah, mainly just from reading it. And there's kind of, I think with the police books, there was like procedure to go through and stuff like that, and it was hard work because if an interview was out of line, people would let you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with the private investigator, it's mainly, you go on instinct, and if there's one clue, you follow it, and there's no one telling you not to. And I think the fact that it was set in the US where he could have a gun, it just, like, every sort of thing felt dangerous where he was willing to use it. And I think, I mean, it's been 18 months since I wrote it, so I might be wrong, but I think the first person he ever kills is in this book. I don't think he'd ever killed a man before.
Yeah.
So everything was always like a sort of easy job where he went and found like a drunk in a bar, and he'd been in fights and stuff. So it's sort of exploring that little, what would happen if he went a bit too far, kind of thing, and how does he remain on the streets? So yeah, it was quite an interesting thing, but yeah, mainly just from other books that I'd read.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to ask Chris, in terms of, like, obviously you do describe that experience of him, killing for the first time, and sort of how he deals with that. But then how did you, because I'm not obviously going to go into it in massive detail, but the bodies dropped quite quickly in various different places. So how did you sort of like keep up with that and navigate that? And one of the things for me reading it was just how believable it seemed, even though there's a lot of people dying and in some horrific ways, but it didn't seem like far-fetched at any point. It seemed quite a natural course. So I was just wondering how you navigated that.
Yeah, I kind of wanted it to be like a bit of a slippery slope where once he'd done it, and I think he does feel remorseful, but it is a very much a case of him or them at the time. So I think even though he feels it and he sort of has a moment where he's like sort of realizes that he'll never be the same person he was again, I think he sort of justifies it to himself, and I think it is rightfully justified because, yeah, like I say, it was him or them. And after that, he kind of does what he needs to do. Maybe not where it's him or them, maybe where it's a bit more premeditated at times. I kind of just like the idea of a man sort of, because I don't plan anything, like the story isn't planned out, I never plot anything, I kind of just see where it goes. And I guess if it feels right when you're writing it, then it probably is going to be okay on the page. And I kind of thought, well, that has to happen. He's backed himself into that corner now, and someone knows that he's done this, so he has to go and sort of take care of that, and who could he question next? So in my head, I kind of had like a sort of Goosebumps, write your own. So I sort of thought, what could he do next, this way or that way? And I'd sort of explore the way that would feel most natural to me if I was him.
I do think that's one of the best things about being a pantster in terms of a plotter, because it gives you that freedom to follow the character, and as you've got a good judge on that character and you've created it, you kind of feel like you trust them more than yourself to write where they're going. And I really think that's a really cool thing to do as an author.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you know the character, like you say, I thought a lot about him and his story, and by the time he'd done that, he'd been in my head probably for about 6 months while I was finishing the cozy. So I sort of, I always think it sounds like la-di-da when you're like, oh, I spent time with the character, but I would sort of think like, what would he be doing now? Or like, so I sort of had a good read on him. So yeah, I think if he was going to do something, it felt real to me. So everything in there, I think, was that's a natural progression of what's happened.
Definitely.
I find it really interesting that you didn't plot this novel, especially with what happens and how it progresses, because some of these actions in the earlier parts of the novel directly impact him later on, which some really emotive scenes there as well. I just thought, just when things were going right for him in a certain way, I thought, oh, he's going to catch a bit of a break here, and then no. So, but again, like, when did that surprise you when certain events came up and you just kind of went with it?
Yeah, and I mean, it does take a lot of rewriting, because if something happened that I hadn't thought of, I mean, if when I finish a chapter, I kind of think what happens next. So I'll spend like the next day thinking about it, and then when I sit down to write, I've sort of got what the next chapter in my head. And if I think, well, that couldn't happen because that hasn't happened, then I need to go back and edit that so that it is. So you can get like the sort of notes at the side that you leave yourself. It's just littered with go back and do this, go back and do this. One of the best things I was ever told was get the full draft done first, because if you go back and add something in that leads to something that's like spider webs, so just get it all done, then go back and add in the bits that you need to get done. Otherwise, you'll never get finished. I think it's really worked, and it's helped me speed up.
I love it. Seeing it as the skeleton, and you first draft the skeleton, then you add and add and add. I love that kind of that vision of it. I asked the audience off the back of what we said about your search history, and I said, "What's the best thing in your search history?" And we've had some interesting things in the comments. Most people say that's why we use incognito mode. But also, Halo said, I did some stab wounds in hot tubs research today because 'tis the season to be bloody.
He's also said mermaid mating later on.
I did. I noticed that, yeah. Mermaid mating. Less gory, recent search of mine.
Can you give us...
Halo, let us know what mermaid mating research was for, because I'm sure if it's not so much of a dark thing for your writing, be interested to see where that's going.
Yeah.
Yeah, Halo writes notoriously dark, and that's why Terry said, yeah, my writing has been pretty dark this year too. Not quite Halo dark, but still. So a lot of people using incognito for their research because they're too ashamed to have writing searches in your history. Oh, dear me.
Ashamed or scared?
Yeah, both, I think. Mr. Hooley, have you got anything dodgy in your search history for your writing?
Quite possibly, yeah.
Or not for your writing.
Yes.
Yeah, I looked at genital castration at one point. How plausible that would be with a pair of scissors.
Nice.
So yeah, that's embedded there somewhere in the search history.
I had my sequel of my only second book. There was a relationship between two females in the second book in Canada, and there was research of hotels, lingerie, wine glasses, and all of these things. I was like, I've got to sort that out, because if my wife sees that, that looks really bad. Anya wrote something in there that I can't pronounce, so I'm not gonna something. Can you
Patrick?
Yes, go on. Mummy decomposition rates when they're not in permafrost. No, I haven't got it.
Is that the thing that they do to you after you die? And sort of like freeze your body.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't. Halo, I'm not reading that out.
What is it? I'll read it.
Go on then.
So there were some controversies, but consensus regarding sleeves and flaps with sheaths, and flaps with mermaid faunification. Nice.
I like that there were some controversies, like there are two people arguing about it. Like there's an expert, and
a massive Twitter storm of can mermaids get it on?
Wow, that's dark, Linda. Yeah. Terry says you don't want to know about mermaid mating. It's a bit fishy. Oh dear God, where is this going? Okay, let's go back to it. What were we talking about, Chris? Hooley?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll make a tedious link between mermaids being in water and there being a scene in this book that occurs in water. Just sort of like that was very filmatic in terms of when I read it, I could almost visualize everything that was kind of going on. So how did that scene come about in terms of, obviously I don't want to spoil anything what happens and stuff, but yeah, just what do you think of that?
I want it. So it comes as I think it's all in one chapter, and it's very much a lot of light and then a lot of dark. And I wanted it to be such a quick flick between the two. I really like the idea of something underwater. I thought that it's I might be wrong, but I think it's a lake, is it? And I quite like the idea of it being quite a romantic setting and the sort of stars glistening off it, and then suddenly there's a lot of.
It reminded me of what's that film called with Ryan Reynolds, where he's dancing and they're both dancing. Oh, what's it called? La La Land. Yeah. It was like that scene in La La Land. If it had gone horribly wrong.
Ryan Reynolds is not in La La Land.
Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Gosling.
Oh,
yeah.
I will take. Oh man, well, I could have marketed it as a dark La La Land. I would have absolutely taken that.
Yeah.
Well, that's really. Thank you very much. Yeah, I am. I quite like. I'm quite a visual person, so I quite like knowing what loads of stuff looks like. So I quite like books where I can picture rooms and walls and the sort of feeling of like someone run their hand along a brick wall and sort of know what that feels like. So I'm quite. I was going to say touchy-feely, but touchy-feely in the head. So I quite like that. So that's how I kind of try and write. And I wanted that scene to be quite close. I felt like it was sort of a bit frantic and there was lots going on, but I still wanted to sort of visualize like the brake lights of a car. You can see as it sort of, well, it wouldn't be braking as it goes away, but the lights of a car and sort of speeding off into the distance and stuff. So yeah, I tried really hard with that to make it frantic, but also you knew exactly what was going on.
Have you got any tips then? Because I kind of write in a similar way, but often if you're a visual writer, it can be too much and can be too visual. Have you got any tips for someone who's stepping into that world who might be over describing perhaps, and if they kind of keep it on a nice level?
Yeah, well, what I tend to do is write a lot, and then on the edit through think, what are the sort of three most important parts? Like what gives the clearest picture without going too far. So a lot of it will get taken out, and if I can sort of do it in 3 bits, like someone walks into a room, notices that, you can get a picture from that. That's it for me. And I don't know if I always manage it, but it's definitely what I aim for. So 3 things.
Nice.
3. I'm talking about 3 an awful lot tonight. I don't know if I'm like some sort of cult leader.
And there's 3 Chris's as well. This is
this is like my dream.
Leah says that I need these tips. I'm a little bit too visual, and there's a lot of people that kind of write and feel like very visual. So it's nice to see. Very good. Sometimes relying on. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say. I should say I'm not the person to be giving tips, perhaps, but
your latest book has got some fantastic reviews, so I think you're being harsh on yourself there, Chris. Linda says, something relying on other senses helps as well, I think. So, yeah, some good advice in there.
So, Chris, another thing I was going to ask you about tip-wise is you have quite a lot of red herrings, I suppose, in this novel. We always think, is he going to find this person? And you definitely lead us down different paths. And every time you did, I kind of thought something different about how the novel was going to end. So again, is that something you had to go back and rectify because you just wrote by the seat of your pants and then had to sort of like edit it, make it make sense? Or did you always kind of want that novel that was very twisty and kind of kept the reader guessing?
Yeah, I wanted one that would keep you guessing. I mentioned Crumley before, and I think you never know what's going to happen right until like almost the final scene. And I really like that, where I think if I was a planner, it would make it much, much easier. So it is very much a case of go through it and then think, actually, that's a good place where sort of pull the rug a little bit. The ending was very, very, very different. And I sort of I submitted it to Sean and I agonized over it, and I thought, well, I'll just write the thing that I'd thought of, which was the actual ending of this one. So I'm really pleased that I did, because I think it just didn't tie it all together as nicely, and the sort of final scene wasn't there. So I'm pleased that I did, because I think that because I added that in, I had to go back and change a few bits as well in the sort of lead up to it. So it is like, it's almost that thing of like, can I be bothered doing the extra work? But you should always do the extra work if it's in your head that you know it's the right thing to do. So yeah, I'm pleased that I did, and you should. Like a naughty school child here.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, is there, as you've obviously come down a darker path now, any scope after probably 2 more books that you're going to go in a different direction again in terms of genre? Is there anything that you kind of haven't written that you're really interested in kind of doing?
There is. Well, it's sort of, there won't be 2 more books, I'm afraid, because I've never had an agent, and this is my 10th book, and I do have an agent now off the back of something that's come about that I can't speak about too much because nothing's been announced yet. I think it will in December, so possibly soon. I had written the first 10,000 words of the next one, where Ash is back in New York. It's called Neon Gomorrah, and I was really loving it. And then this thing came about that sort of got me David Headley, and so I'm writing the thing that came from that. But I don't know, in the back of my head I'm thinking, like, between things, could I just knock out like a little bit every so often? So there might be, because I sort of had thought more about his journey and his story, and you get a bit more of his backstory, and it felt a bit more fully fleshed out, maybe. Because I think there's things that hint at that. Like I say, he's got a divorce, and he was originally from New York, and he's lived in Denver for about 7 years, I think. So in the second one, he'd moved back to New York. And I'd done a lot of research about it and things like that. So maybe it will not go to waste. The other day I did, though, I came up with, so I always quite like to think what different genres, and I came up with I don't know if it's sci-fi particularly, but it's more like, I pitched it to my friend as Then and Then There Were None meets The Martian, where the sort of world was under some sort of a human threat, like the sea level's rising, it's set in the future, and on an island, this like rich man has set up an island where there's a sort of last hope, and he's vetted all these scientists, and it's either fix the earth or take us into space and find us a new home kind of thing. And because it's the safest place on earth, he's vetted all these people and stuff like that, and then the lead scientist is found murdered. And I kind of thought, well, it's quite a nice little set on an island. Nice. There's a bit of jeopardy. So I quite like to try that, and I don't know if that's something that I can try in the future, but I quite like the idea of it.
You see that as a Netflix series.
There we go. I'll abandon everything else right now.
So, Chris, with you obviously potentially leaving Ash for the time being, is that simply because of now new contractual agreements and stuff in place? And if it is, and you can't return to Ash, would you ever do like a lead child in terms of going, I have a brother who can write the next one?
Yeah, well, I mean, contractually, I can go back to him. Like, I've not written myself, or I've not signed anything that says I can't. Like, David's happy that I could go back to that and stuff. It's just that I've got a deadline for something else, and I've never had a deadline before, particularly. So it's new, and it's slightly pressure. Terrifying. Yeah. So all I can think about is this thing. But maybe I've never had an agent. All my books have come from Red Dog, which is an independent. So it's always been like texting a mate after a couple of books. Like Sean and I do the podcast together, and it's he's a mate now. So it would sort of be like, what do you think of this? I'd pitch him in a WhatsApp, and he'd be like, yeah, do that. So sort of working with an agent and working with a different publisher and stuff. It's something I've never done before. So I'm at the beginning of all that, so I don't know what the deal is. But yeah, like no one said that I couldn't go back, and I think Sean would be very happy to go back. So yeah, I mean, never say never. Like I said, I've got these 10,000 words. Yeah, so yeah, we'll see where it goes. But I do very much like him, and it was originally going to be a standalone. We talked to Adrian McKinty, I think, on our podcast, and he was sort of saying, because he wrote his Duffy series, and then he wrote The Chain, which is obviously like huge.
Massive, yeah.
But he said the great thing about standalones is no one has to live. Like everyone, the main character could be in jeopardy. So I really like the idea. Little Ghost was written as a standalone, and at one stage I thought, should I just kill him off? And then I really grew to love him. So I decided against it. But it was quite freeing to think if somebody does like turn up at his house and shoot him, so be it, kind of thing. And it was quite a nice thing that you didn't have to look out for his safety so much.
Yeah. I'd love like I mean, this has never happened as far as I'm aware, but I'd love a Red Dog collaboration in terms of maybe, obviously you've wrote the Irving Ash series, Rob Parker writes a different one, Sean Coleman writes a different one, and then somehow all the characters blend in some way. As a Red Dog like reader, I think that would be something that I would really look forward to.
Yeah.
And all the dots and everything of them all meeting up and stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There's something in the one that Rob wrote, Blackstoke, his horror sort of disgusting thing that he did. There's a link to one of his other books, and I can't remember what it is, but maybe the Water Tower or something is like belongs to someone else in another book. So there was a little throw into that. But yeah, it's a really cool idea. I love when things merge together. Will Carver does it where there's bits and pieces, doesn't he? So
yeah, he's got his whole Carververse set up. But like I can imagine like a Red Dog one. So like maybe obviously you got the PI, but then it could be a detective, and then maybe someone writes the serial killer, and then they kind of all merge into one novel. That'd be really interesting.
Oh, I love it. There we go. Let's get Sean on the phone.
Sean, get on it.
Just wants his royalties. There you go. We've got some questions from the community, guys. So we'll get through this. There's a couple in there, so we'll have a go. Linda, thanks for your question. She says, if you had to write a book combining two unrelated genres, which two would you pick?
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's very good. I like that.
Two unrelated genres. Well, I really like the idea of writing a horror. I'm such a scaredy cat, so I've not watched very many horror films in my life, and when I do, I sort of pull here when I'm a bit nervous. So I remember coming out of I went to watch something that my auntie took me to, and it was awful. Sorority Row, I think, and my hair was like flat, and then I didn't realize how scared I'd been, but I've been pulling it. So I'd really like to give myself, because I've been reading a bit more Stephen King this year. I read Salem's Lot, which I really, really loved. I've read a few more of his horror ones, so I'd really like to try horror with something. Horror goes quite well with most things, doesn't it?
Comedy and horror.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that goes well.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, let's go.
Because you always have the shocking, the bloody, or the down, or the scary bits, and then suddenly you're laughing. It's a great combination, I think.
Yeah, light relief. What about you two?
I would have gone down the horror route, definitely. And comedy is what popped in my head, so I'd go with you on that, Chris.
There we go.
Yeah, I was thinking, I may have got this wrong, but I've been reading some hard case crime novels, and there was one of them that had, and a lot of the hard case crime novels have semi-naked people on the front. And this one, I may have mixed this up with the picture that I've seen on Twitter. If I have, I'm sorry for hard case crime, but there's a man and he's pretty much naked, but there's a woman in front of him, and the woman in front of him is covering his body, but she's a ghost. So that sort of like noir crime with the horror ghost element in it. I think I'd love to, because I think it fits really well with people dying, obviously, but then maybe coming back to haunt people in certain ways and have sex with the ghost. Like, well, I mean,
and erotica,
that'd be a weird thing to write about.
Halo says horror and self-help. Oh, brilliant. Where is the next one up there? That's cracked me up. Okay, so from Halo again. Have you ever disturbed yourself writing a particularly dark scene?
Yeah. like I'm quite a squeamish person, and so a lot of the research that I've had to do, it screws me out. And I wrote a scene where I think it was in the second police book where someone had like cut their wrists, and the sort of description of it, I think because I googled not very nice photos and it was sort of ingrained in my brain, and I thought, well, if I've seen it, everyone else has to imagine it too. So I did that, and Sean is like sort of unflappable, and he wrote in the edit, I think you've gone a bit far here. Ooh. So I've disturbed myself and someone else, and luckily it was toned down a lot.
Fantastic. Have you, Chris? Hoodie?
Again, yeah, I wrote a scene once where someone read it and they said 2 weeks later, I'm still thinking about that story, but not in a good way.
Is that good though, or is that bad for a reader?
I took it as a win, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's still in your mind, even if you didn't like it, it's still there. So
definitely, I think that's good. Ross Young, thank you. Do you develop your characters fully before writing, or do you learn about them as you write?
That's a really good question. I think the main character, I have to, otherwise I struggle to get into the world. And I think once I know him, then everything else falls into place. So Irving Ash, I spent a lot of time getting right. I sort of knew what music he liked. I knew little bits about him that I thought really hard about, that the sort of things that I think, if you're hanging out with friends, the things that affect the friends that you might have. So things like music, like you tend to like similar music to your friends because you go to gigs together and things like that. So I kind of thought about the big things that are big to me. Sort of side characters. So there's a character in this called Brother John, who I imagine him coming in and meeting Irving Ash wearing monk's robes. And the reason he wears monk's robes is so that he can hide more weapons. And that was the only thing I knew about him when I started writing him. And obviously, if he's doing that, he's a dangerous man. So he was the most fun to write. And usually I like to know them beforehand, but he was quite fun. Just, I think because he's unpredictable anyway, unpredictable and violent. And it's a pretty good combination that whatever he does is probably going to be the right choice, because there is no right choice for him. So he was fun to write without knowing anything about, but usually that terrifies me.
That's a really good description, and I really feel like, as the similar kind of writer in style of Panston, I discovered a lot about my characters when I wrote them along the way, and they surprised me with what their actions were. So I think I'm quite opposite in that I didn't have a very good view. I had an initial view of what they were like, and they surprised me along the way. I mean, Chris, are you a Panston as well, Hoodie?
I was initially, but I think I've switched now to more of a plotter, simply because obviously I did the university course and it talked a lot about, a big part of it was studying the art of writing, and a lot of the books that you read about writing always refer to like having a clear structure and stuff to make it a lot easier. And one of the books that I read was Story or Die, and it talked about knowing the importance of knowing your character, just so you know absolutely everything, like Chris mentioned there, with knowing what music they like and all sorts of things like that, because then you can, when they're in certain scenarios, whatever you come across, you can know how they would react, and it makes it more authentic. So I think it's something that I've definitely changed as I've gone on and started to progress.
Thank you again for the questions, guys. Of the Chris's trio, who would be eaten first on a desert island?
But you're quite fast, aren't you? You do running and stuff.
I thought you were going to say something else then.
I know. I know it's December, but come on. Who are you referencing there, Chris?
You. So you're quite fit, aren't you?
Depends. I would be if someone was chasing me, I think.
Yeah, I think you could get away. Although, I don't know, Chris and, could we take them?
I think they'd want to eat me more out of there's more to eat, if that makes sense.
No, have you seen these Giles?
All right, so I think we'd be a coin toss. So I think we'd just go for one of us. I think we'd be pretty even on that one.
Maybe we'd have to have a pact where we all hold each other's arm and we take the first bite together. So there's a bit of solidarity.
Yeah.
I mean, to be
You see,
honest,
it
I
tastes
think
nicer.
if we were on the Alive kind of scenario with a plane crash in that film, I'd be quite happy to see it. Just eat me, guys. Once I'm dead, of course.
Yeah.
I think if there's enough rum, I'd say, do you know what? I'll drink all the rum, and then you just go to town when I'm passed out.
Surely we just cook you in the rum. Anyway, Ross says, how do you think mermaids have sex? I think if you want that answer, watch Lighthouse with William Dafoe in it. Have you seen that, anyone?
No,
it definitely.
Oh, you need to watch that film.
Change the perception of it.
It was amazing. It came out like 2 years ago. It's a black and white. It looks really old school. It's got William Dafoe, and it might be Robert Pattinson in that.
Yeah, you're right.
It's got two big actors, and they're just going crazy in this lighthouse. And there's a scene with a mermaid, and it gets all very weird. That's all I know. All I remember.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if Chris does visit Irving Ash again and he visits the adult entertainment industry, then maybe that's something that he can explore. I'm sure there's a couple of adult actors in Little Ghost that could maybe take on the mermaid roles.
When I thought about it at the start, I thought, like is it Austin Powers where he has a belt that a gun comes out of, and it's around his area.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like a mermaid where like some scales sort of just part.
Parting of the scales.
Sounds plausible.
Yeah.
The parting of the scales. There's a literary novel about mermaids.
Yeah. Ross says he wouldn't trust Hooli. He'd kill you while you sleep if he was desperate. So he'd drink the rum, wait till we're asleep, and then he'll kill himself.
Yeah.
We got one more. Let's finish off this questions for the guys. You are forced to live on a desert island with no other people or a book, or you have to live in the belly of a whale, with your worst enemy. Which do you pick? Clearly a desert island, right?
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah.
Would you go mad quicker? Which one? Your worst enemy, that could be like a rom-com, couldn't it? That could be like your meet cute here. Belly of a whale, worst enemy.
Yeah.
Everything turns out good. Get blown out the blowhole at the end.
Yeah,
I think I'd be quite happily walking around a desert island with nothing. Just chatting to myself.
Do you get provisions, or do you have to look after yourself?
I don't know. If I was hungry on the island, probably just go in the whale's belly, to be honest. Yeah. I
mean, do you actually have a worst enemy? I'm trying to think of somebody who I'd be trapped with, and I'm struggling, to be honest. Who am I stuck with?
Yeah, that is
I don't know. I don't think I've got a good enemy or a bad one or worst one.
No.
Linda says mental face paint image of Hooli with face paint and a spear. You don't have to be fast, just faster than the others. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. Amazing. So we're coming up on the hour, Chris. We got a couple more questions for Chris McDonald, shall we? Obviously, Chris, your book has been out for about a month now. I think November it came out. Where can people get hold of that and get stuck into this amazing story?
It's available like Amazon and all the usuals, but Red Dog Press are an independent publisher. They do amazing things, and I think a lot of indies are sort of facing a struggle with rising costs of everything. So the best place to go is direct to their website, Red Dog Press, and it comes beautifully wrapped in nice red paper and bookmarks and things like that. So it is really worth it. It doesn't cost much more than what it would be on Amazon. But it's making someone's, that's his job, and that amount of money matters so much more to him than it does the massive machine. So yeah, Red Dog Press if you can.
Bro. And I suppose what can we look forward to in the future? What if we were to keep an eye out for Chris McDonald? I know obviously you can't go into too much details, but when roughly should we start to look on your website and stuff again?
I think whatever I'm writing is due to come out next October. So I'm sure I will be shouting about it. I'm awful with secrets, so I'm really trying my hardest not to give anything away. As soon, honestly, the second that I'm freed, I will be shouting it from some sort of rooftop. So yeah, I'm sorry that I'm having to be vague and nondescript, but I don't want my wrist slapped.
Yeah, we'll look out for next October.
Yes.
There's some pressure in the chat from Ross. He says BZ wants to know where his tongue twisters are, and he's sending Grim round if you don't get them. I don't know, Chris McDonald, do you any good at tongue twisters? Because I've got to be honest with you guys, I've not started writing mine.
No, is this a thing?
Well, we've got a Chris versus Chris challenge on the go at the moment. So each week or now and then, people give us a Chris versus Chris challenge, and Ross, as part one, Chris gave us a tongue twister, right?
Yeah, I've got mine. If I can find my phone, I'll go and look for it and then I'll read it out.
Okay, if you're willing to do that, you might give me some inspiration.
Yeah. So you're having to write them, and oh man, that is tough.
Well, Stephen J. Golds a couple of weeks ago came on the show, and he gave us the challenge of a 4-line poem. So he took the poems that we gave him and he's published them in Punk Noir magazine, which is absolutely incredible. Yeah, very, very cool. But he hasn't come back to us with a winner yet. We've got the tongue twister to do, but Chris Hooley won the first challenge, which was we did a book design competition for one of our viewers about 3-4 weeks ago, and he took the victory there. So I'm really hoping that I'll get something out very, very soon. Ross says, don't read it out. He doesn't want to read it out. No. Yeah, so tongue twisters, Chris. You're willing to participate in this, I think, and send one in with us. But yeah, I've never written one.
No.
Never.
All I can think of that is that really juvenile she sells seashells on the seashore.
Mr. Hooley, you need to stop. Ross has said, do not read that out.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe he wants to animate it or something. I'm not sure yet, but he's put a ban on you reading that one.
God. I literally just went all the way upstairs to get this as well. I was ready for it.
Oh. But there you go. So we'll have to wait, Chris. Ross, I will work on it. I've got a day off on Thursday. I'll get that sorted then for you. But there you go. Chris McDonald, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a wonderful time again, and you're always welcome on this show. And fantastic for being here. And I hope your book Little Ghost does fantastic. And I can't wait for the next 2 of the 3-part series.
Thank you. Honestly, you two are incredible, and I really do appreciate you putting yourselves out tonight for this. I loved it last time, and I've loved it this time. So yeah, I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. It's been great. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff, guys. In the chat, thank you so much for all your comments. They've been hilarious. Your questions have been brilliant. You've been brilliant as always, and we will look forward to seeing you on Friday. Mr. Hooley will.
See you next Tuesday. Right after this. On Twitter Spaces. We will be there on Twitter Spaces. See you next Tuesday. As soon as we can set it up, probably take about 3-4 minutes. And then, if you want to come chat to us on there, chat to us about writing, anything that we've talked about today. It's happening every Tuesday. So even if you watch this in a few weeks' time, or you're picking it up this weekend, then join us Tuesday. See you next Tuesday. We'll be there.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.